Welcome to Business by Design, the podcast for business owners that want to start, scale, or exit a business. If you've followed us for a while, you know us as the Holistic Accountant Podcast. Same two hosts, Mena and I, same practical focus, just a sharper name for what we're really here to do. Right, let's get into today's episode. Okay, welcome to Business by Design podcast. And today, what we wanted to do is spend a little bit of time talking about why the name changed. Because after 5 years of very hard work of recording the Holistic Accountant, and really with a lot of podcasting, particularly when you don't have guests, a lot of the frictional work is, thinking about what to talk about and how to sort of add value. But after 5 years of all that hard work, we wanted to change the name, really because our thinking hasn't changed, but where the podcast is heading and has headed has changed. And we thought we needed a name to sort of better reflect that journey. And hopefully it becomes more and more obvious as we, design episodes that are more focused on helping you grow a sustainable business that isn't dependent on you, the founder or owner. And so how do we do that? How do we start a business? How do we scale a business and grow it? And also how do we exit a business is, incredibly important to think about. And what we wanted to do originally with the Holistic Accountant is give you examples of how basic compliance services like completing a tax return and providing advice in regards to business can have holistic impacts. So how it can help you grow your business and build a great business, so it's not just about produce a tax return. Hopefully we've done that, but really now the next transitional step of that is really to help you build a sustainable business that, as I said, isn't dependent on you, solely dependent on you, the founder or owner of that business. Because really, you can get all the structuring right and you can have a fantastic sort of accounting function, if you like. But if your business is still fragile in terms of, its profitability isn't consistent, it's not growing, it's got some fragile components of it, then it doesn't matter how well your accounting or business function is, you still have a fragile business. And really, by building, a framework and a flywheel around how to sort of scale a business, how to make it stronger, how to make it less dependent on you is we think is the answer. And really most business owners, Mina, I think find this out probably at the wrong time. That's when they want to either scale or even exit their business.
We've seen that a lot lately, Stuart, where a lot of people are trying to sort of exit their business or sell the business, and they've realized that their business is too reliant on them. They don't have or understand the business entirely and understand what a buyer actually looks for. They focus too much on the numbers. Now, the numbers alone, they're pretty important. I'm not going to discount that, but numbers alone don't tell you the story. Business owners, business purchasers, when they come to buy your business, they're looking beyond the numbers. They're looking at things such as how dependent is the relationships from the stakeholders on the owners. What is it like? Where are the bottlenecks in the business? Is every decision in the business reliant on the business owner? So it's really important to understand that numbers alone don't tell you the whole story. Numbers tell you how profitable the business is, yes, but businesses can chop and change from year to year. A particular business comes to mind where I've actually just met with these clients last week. They're a engineering consulting business and they do a lot of work or project-based work, especially for the government. Now, as we all know, the government likes to spend a bit of money, so they're a bit liberal in their sort of budgets, and they're all doing well, very well, year on year. And now they've come to a point where the government's sort of backing out or sort of watching what they're spending. Well, I'd like to think that they are, that they're not getting or being awarded as many projects. Now, we were working with these clients, I think, for almost 3 years now, and every year we would have the same conversation with them around, okay, the revenue is great, the profitability is great, your margins are fantastic, but what are we doing with these funds? How are we diversifying away from your main business client? How do we diversify to the private sector? Now, these are the important conversations to have because now they're in a bit of a pickle. They've earned millions of dollars year on year, but now a lot of their business has dried up. They've got staff to pay, overheads to pay, and they haven't really done anything from the business point of view. So this is really where Stuart and I have thought of a strategic framework that we can think about all the elements of business that come together so that we can actually understand a business and market a business and understand the metrics behind a business about what makes it drive.
That's right, Mina, and we have called it the VERT flywheel methodology, or VERT flywheel. VERT is an acronym, stands for value, engine, reach, and team. And it really is just another framework well, not just another framework, it's a framework that helps us really understand business and make more strategic business decisions. So let me give you a plain sort of explanation. And over the coming weeks and months, we'll be pulling this apart and really helping you understand how you can use the VERT flywheel to not only start a business, so design a business model, scale a business, so grow an existing business, and exit a business. So make sure that, it reduces the founder dependence, that opens up a few other exit strategies, or as many exit strategies as possible as a result of, using this approach to business. Okay, so let me explain that. Value is really why your customers choose you and pay the price point of which you have designed. So value is really your why, if you like. Why do you exist? Why do customers come to you? Why do customers come back to you? Engine is actually how you deliver that value on a repeatable and a consistent and profitable way. So, you've got a value proposition there that resonates with your target customer at your target price and your target profitability. Now, if they keep coming back to you and they refer all their friends and colleagues and so forth, how do you consistently deliver that value at that target profitability, at that target value and consistency? So consistency in terms of, the value that you're delivering. So that's really your business engine. Reach is how you reliably find the right customers. So there's two elements here. It's your target customer, your ideal customer, and how do they hear about you, or how do you educate them that you exist? Because of course you can have a great value proposition, you can have the best engine deliver that value, but if no one knows you exist, what's the whole point? And the team element is the people behind all those systems and processes and engines that keeps it growing, keeps it turning, keeps it improving. And the key element here is these are not four separate individual projects. It's not value is one and then you move over to engine and reach and team. They are interconnected and they reinforce each other, which means that it produces compounding results. And the compounding results really come down to two things. What is your profit margin? And is your business growing? Because, of course, a good profit margin without growth, your business is really stalling. And we've said before in this podcast, you're either growing or you're dying. There's no in between. So, growth is important. Or you could have growth, but if it's growing at declining profitability, then actually you're going to have a fragile business that will eventually just burn more cash than it provides the owner. So the whole idea is that you want stable or growing profitability and certainly growing top line revenue, which then with stable profitability obviously drops to the bottom line. So maybe Meena, you can talk about, how do we use this VERT flywheel methodology when we're looking at a business, when we're talking to clients, and how this methodology kind of shows which part of their business they need to be working on first or as a primary focus.
So the idea is not to make more decisions, because as a business owner, you're probably not short of business decisions, but it's to make better decisions, to make them from a single lens, a single point of view, where you actually understand all those factors of a business that Stuart just mentioned in the VERT flywheel, to help you understand what levers in your business need to be improved so that your business operates better. So think about, for example, if you got a marketing idea. Now, you might have a great marketing idea where you might have, engage or spend a lot of money on social media and the like, and SEO management, but you really need to understand how that actually changes what you're delivering, how that changes your value, how that improves your reach. What are you actually trying to achieve by implementing that marketing idea? And what is the payback period? Are you spending too much? Is it going to lead to a long lead time for a conversion cycle? And how that's going to lead to more business for you. Now, as a business owner, I mentioned before that you're not short of ideas, and probably you're pretty short on time. So this is where you can really lean on your accountant to understand the discipline of your business, to understand what you're trying to achieve and how they can help you keep accountable for what you're trying to achieve. So whether it is a new hire, a new marketing strategy, or whatever it is, if we're going to do it, what does it actually cost us? And what is the rate of return? Does it improve anything in that VERT flywheel? flywheel? Does it improve anything in the metrics in that business that will yield us a better sort of more sales, better margins, better reach, or help us attract better team members? It's really important for us to understand the results before making that decision.
That's right, Mina. I guess it's important for us to really focus on, who is our target listener for this podcast, which hopefully it doesn't really change. I guess if people have been listening along the way, the content I think has changed quite a bit over the last sort of 5 years or so. But I guess, our focus is to change it even more and add even more value. And I think by having a framework, a flywheel like we're presenting, it really does, I think, help make more sense out of business and business decisions and, to really identify where weakness is in a business, how we can grow it, how we can exit it, and these sorts of things. So I would describe the target audience to this podcast as anyone that really wants to grow, scale, or exit a business. Now, I think there's probably going to be a few different cohorts in this group of people. So there's going to be people that, might be setting out to start their first business or a new business and want to come up with a business plan, or you can use the methodology and things that you'll learn in this podcast to help you do that, because I think execution is key. So how we, execute a strategy is obviously fundamental to success. But I think a lot of people make mistakes in business that have come back to the fundamentals of the business model. So it was probably, regardless of quality of execution, it was probably never going to work, or it was always going to provide challenges. So by having a methodology and a framework, it helps us avoid making those mistakes. And then I think there's a cohort of business people that, go out and start a business, a very successful business, but because it's so founder dependent, because it's so owner dependent, they find it difficult to scale. So how do you grow a business then without diminishing the value and quality of the service or product that you're delivering, and also without diminishing the profitability and without working, 100 hours a week? And then the third and final cohort is probably people that, want to implement an exit strategy, or at least have the optionality of an exit strategy. So again, that comes back to founder owner dependence. So how do you build a very strong business that isn't relying or dependent on one individuals or a small group of individuals in order to run that business? And if you're successful in doing that, there's a lot of different succession options available to you. It could be a management buyout of the new leaders in that business. It could be just simply running that business yourself, but without day-to-day involvement. It could be a trade sale to a competitor or aligned industry participant. There's lots of different options available if you've got the right business and you've got the right structure within that business. Who's this podcast not for? Well, anyone that's not really interested in growing their business or doing those things, I think. And that's fine. Like if you're a sole trader and you're quite happy where you are, I mean, you still probably get value from the podcast, but it's, our focus is really helping those three cohorts as we've just described. We still want to bring, some of the traditional content that was spoken about. So if there's, changing tax laws, or if there's opportunities to restructure or navigate things like, that's been included in the recent federal budget, we'll still very much include those sorts of commentaries here. But our real focus is not only, ticking those boxes, but really making sure that we're communicating a great framework to help make better business decisions. And it still comes back to the holistic approach, Mina.
That's right, Stuart. End of the day, we all get into business for the same reason. We want to build wealth, we want a good lifestyle, we want to have a healthy retirement, and just enjoy life. It's not always just about this year's tax bill, and unfortunately, that's a big focus for a lot of people. From my perspective, or from our perspective, tax is just a consequence of making money. Now, it's what we do with the money after tax that's important. If all your wealth is trapped inside the business, you carry the full risk as the world shifts. So, if there's an industry disruption to your industry, if there's any litigation risk or anything like that, and it's all trapped in there, what have you done? You've basically just built a whole bunch of retained earnings and not been able to invest or do anything that would improve your wealth or your retirement or your lifestyle. So it's really important to understand that conventional advice isn't always the right type of advice for your business. You need to be asking questions beyond the framework of the year-end financials and tax returns. So, the idea of the framework that we're introducing is to ask yourself or give business owners the ability or the framework to ask themselves if they're going to make a decision business, what part of that flywheel does it improve and how does it improve your overall profit? And does it de risk you from your business? So, these are the important metrics that we want to understand beyond the numbers. So, in each of the following episodes, we're actually going to take one of these threads and make it usable, starting from the weakest link to the loudest. So, in next week's episode, we're actually going to talk about the 3 things that kill business. That's it for now. Until next week, bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Business by Design. We're dedicated to producing practical, valuable insights for business owners, and this show grows through people like you. If you found something useful today, the best way to pay it forward is to leave a rating or review. It only takes a minute and it genuinely helps. And if you know of a business owner who could benefit, share this episode with them. We'll see you next week.